I decided that 2026 is going to be the year of the Portuguese. I feel like my Portuguese is at a good level. I can communicate. I can talk about pretty much everything. But there's a lot of errors. There's a lot of weird phrasing. There's a lot of, oh, wait, let me think for a second. How do I communicate what I'm trying to say? And I just want to smooth it out. I want it to just be natural. I want people to think I'm Brazilian. I don't want it to be such a hassle to speak, to communicate, right? I don't want it to be such a chore. After an hour of talking, I don't want to take a deep breath and go like that, right? Like I don't do that after I talk for an hour in English. I just keep walking. So that's the goal. And I have a little system. The first one is just a small little thing just to help with pronunciation. Just some shadowing that my plan is to do like 5 minutes a day, maybe bring it up to 10. But I feel like a little of this goes a long way. And I just have like an audiobook and I just play. Como professor de natação. And I pause and then I say what they said. Precisam falar alto
virem no meio do volume
no meio do volume estratosférico da música.
Do vozerio e das
motocicletas, So that, I've noticed that when I do that for a while, like a couple weeks, even if it's just a small, like 10 minutes a day, not really much, like I feel my pronunciation gets just a tad more Brazilian. And there's obviously speaking practice. So what I've been doing is, well, I guess I'll just show you. I have this thing set up in ChatGPT where I speak to it, and then it just, and I usually speak for like, I don't know, just 2 minutes. And then it gives me a paragraph and then 3 questions. And that makes it really easy to just keep talking because those 3 questions, because a lot of times like you want to practice, but especially when you're on your own, it's like, what do I say? What do I talk about? And so I try to do like 10 of those per day. And so I guess we'll just do an example. Cara, hoje é Natal. Eu acho que o ano foi meio horrível, para falar a verdade. Mas estou ansioso para o próximo ano. Um ano horrível só quer dizer que o próximo ano vai ser melhor. Talvez, né? Também pode ser que o próximo ano seja até pior, mas não vamos pensar nisso. Eu estava pensando ontem, será que brasileiro tem nome para o Christmas Eve? Eu estava pensando que talvez podia ser véspera do Natal, mas não estava certo. Talvez você saiba, talvez não. Eu acho que pelo fato de você ser ChatGPT, eu imagino que você saiba, né? Mas nunca se sabe. Pode ser que isso seja a única coisa no mundo do que você não conhece. So I just say a little thing. I send it to ChatGPT. Right? I asked it a question during it, so it just gave me a little paragraph in response to what I said. I asked it a question when I was speaking Portuguese, and I asked it what Christmas Eve was called in Portuguese, and the first thing it did was reply to that, and then it just went off about other things, and then it gave me 3 little questions. What was the most difficult part of that difficult year? Was it emotional? Was it practical or existential? Then it asked what would make 2026 better, even if it wasn't perfect, and then asked me a question about Christmas Eve. But yeah, so I feel like just 20-30 minutes of that would really go a long way. So shadow, speaking, and obviously still consuming content. The first 2 years basically was like mostly just consuming content. Like I wasn't really practicing speaking. I mean, the first year I didn't really practice speaking at all. It was just like watching shows and listening to podcasts and reading books while listening to the audiobook to make sure I'm like getting the pronunciations right. So now that I'm focusing more on speaking, I think that will go down to maybe just like an hour a day of either like watching something or listening to something, because it's just like there's so much to learn, like how people do certain phrasings and how they communicate certain things, and especially like once I start like speaking and like noticing my errors and stuff, I'm like completely attuned to that. So like when you hear an example of that like in an actual movie, in a series, it just like reinforces it on a level that's really, really striking. So I feel like it's really important to get that like that constant input, that constant hearing of like, okay, how do Brazilians communicate this idea, this idea, this idea? And you'd be surprised how quickly, like if you're like tuned into something, you'd be surprised how quickly that thing will show up. Like if you're like, wait, how do they communicate this? If you're watching enough, you're gonna come across it pretty quickly. So there's the shadow, there's the talking. I also have a Portuguese teacher, which is more talking. I think I'm gonna try to speak to her like twice a week, 3 times a week if possible. And then the last thing is just, well, I guess there's one more thing, and then there's my diary, which is different from the speaking because you can really think about how you're gonna phrase it. And sometimes I'll like give a certain sentence to ChatGPT and be like, how do I, you know what I'm trying to say? How do I say this well? Or sometimes what I'll do is I'll give it a sentence and then just put a space. If there's a word that I'm not quite sure, like what would go well here? Like how do I, what's the verb that would work in this sentence, you know? It's really good at that. I find that writing really allows you to take your time to make sure everything's being formed well, because a lot of times with speaking, you just sort of like get in the groove and you don't even realize some of the things you're saying or some of the things you're just sort of freestyling it. So I think it's really important to have those too. And then I do corrections. I do corrections from what I spoke, because in when you speak it in ChatGPT, it'll give you the whole transcript. So then I just get corrections from what I said and from what I wrote. And a lot of times it can be really nitpicky and really like, really? So sometimes I'll say like, you just give me like the 5 most egregious errors that you can find in this piece of text or in this audio transcript. And yeah, I mean, if I do that every day by the end of 2026, they're going to give me citizenship.